I bought my dream house last month, a small but beautiful place I could finally call mine. It had wide windows that let the morning light pour in, and every corner smelled like peace, something I hadn't felt in years. I thought my family would be proud of me, that they'd say, "You did it, Madison. You made it on your own." But instead, they called me selfish. They said I was ungrateful for doing things without them. My mom said I had forgotten where I came from. My sister Haley laughed and told me I was showing off. And my ex-husband Ryan said I was trying too hard to prove something. Their words didn't sting the way they used to. They just echoed in my head like noise I'd already learned to tune out. Because deep down, I knew this moment wasn't about them. It was about me finally taking my life back. I had spent years giving, sacrificing, and apologizing just to make them happy. But the more I gave, the less they respected me. The day I signed those house papers, I promised myself that chapter was over. I still remember how it used to feel when their approval was everything to me. I worked long hours, helped with their bills, and gave up vacations just to keep things together. When I was married to Ryan, I believed we were a team. But when times got hard, he switched sides. And I realized the team I thought I had never really existed. My parents took his side too, saying I needed to be more patient and more understanding. They didn't see how empty I was inside, how tired I'd become from carrying everyone's expectations on my shoulders. The day I moved into my house, I stood in the living room and let the silence fill the air. No shouting, no judgment, no guilt. Just quiet. I realized I had built this space not just with money, but with every tear I'd once cried for people who never saw my worth. I didn't need their validation anymore. I didn't need to prove that I was good enough. When they came to visit uninvited, I didn't argue. I didn't defend myself. I just stood there calm and said, "I'm happy here. That's all that matters." They rolled their eyes, said I was being dramatic, and walked out. But for the first time, their leaving didn't hurt. It felt like freedom. Now, every morning I wake up, I open the curtains, breathe in the air, and remind myself how far I've come. This house isn't just walls and furniture. It's proof that I survived their betrayal. It's proof that peace can grow even in the ruins of broken trust. And as I sip my coffee and look out the window, I whisper to myself, "You did it, Madison. You finally came home." Madison had always been the one everyone could count on. She was the problem solver, the one who showed up no matter how tired she was. At 32, her life looked perfect from the outside. A good job, a husband who seemed supportive, and a family who said they were proud of her. But behind that image was a woman who was always giving and never receiving. Madison worked long hours, sometimes double shifts, just to help her parents pay their mortgage. When her younger sister, Haley, needed money for college, Madison covered it without hesitation. It felt good to help them. It made her believe that love meant sacrifice. Her husband, Ryan, often told her they were a team. He'd smile and say, "We're in this together," and she believed him. Every paycheck she got went toward building their future. Savings, bills, home projects. She thought they shared the same dream. But everything changed when Madison's company went through sudden budget cuts. She was told she'd be laid off temporarily, maybe for a few months. She tried to stay calm, telling herself she'd find something new soon. At first, she expected support. Instead, she got silence. Ryan started acting distant. He'd come home late, eat without saying much, and make small comments that slowly cut her down. "You've been home all day again," he'd say. "It must be nice not having to work." His words felt sharp, like tiny reminders that she no longer had value. Her parents stopped checking in. Before, her mom used to call every evening, but now days went by without a word. When Madison finally called, her mom sighed and said, "You'll be fine. Everyone struggles sometimes." Her dad told her to keep her chin up, but never offered any real comfort. It was like the moment she stopped being useful, she stopped existing to them. Haley, her sister, was no different. Madison had supported her for years, books, tuition, even rent when Haley couldn't afford it. But now Haley laughed when Madison said she was looking for a new job. "Guess you're finally seeing what real life is like," she said, half joking, half cruel. That sentence stuck in Madison's mind for days. The house felt heavier every day. Ryan barely looked at her. The warmth they once shared was gone, replaced by awkward silence and cold politeness. Madison tried to talk to him, to explain how hard she was trying to stay positive, but he only shrugged. "You'll figure it out," he said one night, eyes fixed on his phone. It was in those quiet, lonely weeks that Madison began to see everything clearly. The love she thought surrounded her wasn't love at all. It was convenience. They cared as long as she was useful, as long as she was the one giving. For the first time, Madison started wondering what life would look like if she stopped carrying everyone else's weight and focused on herself. It was late, almost midnight, when Madison woke up to the sound of a voice coming from the living room. At first, she thought Ryan was watching TV, but when she listened closely, she realized he was on the phone. His tone was soft, calm, the kind he rarely used with her anymore. She got out of bed quietly and walked toward the door, stopping when she heard her sister's name. Ryan was talking to Haley. Madison's heart started racing. She pressed her hand against the wall, trying to stay quiet. Ryan's voice was low but clear enough. "She's not the same woman I married," he said. "She's become lazy, always moping around. I should have listened to Mom, she saw it coming." Madison froze. Her stomach twisted as she heard Haley's light laugh on the other end. Haley said something Madison couldn't fully catch, but she heard her own name again, followed by Ryan sighing. "I don't know how much longer I can do this," he said. "She's different now. It's exhausting." Madison felt like the floor beneath her was gone. She wanted to believe she misheard, that maybe it wasn't about her. But every word made it clear. The man she trusted most was mocking her behind her back, and with her own sister. She stepped back into the hallway, her chest tight, her throat dry. It wasn't just betrayal, it was humiliation. The people she had loved and supported the most were now whispering about her, like she was a burden. It wasn't just Ryan, it was all of them. She went back to the bedroom, her legs shaking. She sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the floor, replaying every conversation from the past few months. The sudden coldness from her parents. Haley's distant tone. Ryan's criticism. It all connected now. They weren't just drifting away, they were talking about her. Judging her. Making her the problem. That night, she didn't sleep. She lay there in the dark, listening as Ryan came back to bed and pretended nothing happened. His breathing was steady, peaceful, while hers was shallow and uneven. She stared at the ceiling, feeling the weight of something breaking inside her. Not just her trust, but her belief that her family ever truly cared. The next morning, she made breakfast as if nothing had happened. Ryan scrolled through his phone, acting normal. Madison watched him quietly, noticing how easy it was for him to lie, how natural it had become. Every smile, every casual word felt fake. As the day went on, the anger started to replace the pain. She wasn't going to confront them yet. Not Ryan, not Haley. Not until she was ready. But in that moment, Madison knew one thing for sure. She couldn't unhear what she heard. Something inside her had changed. And she knew that from this point forward, she could never look at any of them the same way again. After that night, Madison started noticing small things she hadn't paid attention to before. Ryan's phone was always face down. He started dressing better, wearing cologne he hadn't touched in years. Haley, who used to barely call, suddenly started texting Ryan often, laughing about things Madison didn't know. When she asked what they were talking about, Ryan would say, "Just giving your sister some advice." Something about the way he said it made her uneasy, but she tried to ignore it. She didn't want to believe her own husband and sister could cross that line. Days turned into weeks, and their connection became harder to ignore. Ryan began spending more evenings, helping Haley with job stuff. Sometimes he wouldn't come home until late, claiming they were discussing her future. Madison wanted to trust him, but deep down, she felt something was wrong. Every time she asked questions, Ryan got defensive. "You're overthinking again," he said. "You need to relax." One night, she saw a message pop up on Ryan's phone, Haley's name, followed by a heart emoji. Her hands shook as she read the preview. "Thanks for tonight. You always know how to make me feel better." Madison's chest tightened. She didn't even open the message. She just stared at it until her vision blurred. When she confronted Ryan, he snapped. "Are you serious right now?" he shouted. "You're paranoid. She's your sister." His anger felt rehearsed, like he was trying too hard to make her doubt herself. Haley joined in, calling Madison insecure and jealous. They both acted like she was the crazy one, twisting her words until she started to question her own reality. But deep down, she knew the truth. Something was happening between them, even if they wouldn't admit it. Madison stopped arguing. Instead, she quietly watched, waiting for the moment when their lies would expose themselves. It happened 2 weeks later. Madison had gone out to clear her head, driving around the city until hunger brought her to a small restaurant on the edge of town. She parked outside and glanced through the window, and there they were. Ryan and Haley sitting together, laughing, leaning close, holding hands across the table. There was no mistaking it. No advice session. No misunderstanding. Just betrayal in its purest form. Madison felt numb. She didn't walk in. She didn't cause a scene. She simply turned around, drove home, and cried until her eyes ached. The people she had trusted most had broken something she could never fix. When she finally told her parents, hoping they'd stand by her, their reaction crushed her even more. Her mom sighed and said, "Honey, sometimes people make mistakes. Don't let this destroy the family." Her dad quietly agreed. "Forgive and forget," he said. "She's your sister." Madison stared at them, realizing she was completely alone. Her pain didn't matter. Her betrayal didn't matter. All they cared about was pretending everything was fine. That was the night Madison stopped asking for anyone to understand her. She knew now, if she wanted peace, she'd have to create it herself, even if it meant walking away from everyone she once loved. The week after Madison saw Ryan and Haley together at the restaurant, she couldn't sleep, couldn't eat, and couldn't look at either of them without feeling sick. Everything inside her told her it was over. There was nothing left to save. So she did the one thing she knew she had to do. She filed for divorce. It wasn't out of anger anymore. It was out of exhaustion. She was done begging for respect from people who had already decided she didn't deserve it. When Ryan was served the papers, he acted shocked, as if he hadn't done anything wrong. "You're really doing this?" he asked, pretending to be the victim. "You're going to destroy everything we built?" Madison didn't respond. There was no point explaining betrayal to someone who didn't even feel guilty about it. He muttered something under his breath and stormed out, leaving the door half open behind him, just like he had left her trust. She expected her family to finally stand by her, to at least understand why she couldn't stay married to a man who had betrayed her with her own sister. But when she told them, their reaction was nothing like she imagined. Her mother's voice rose the second Madison said the word divorce. "You're tearing this family apart over a misunderstanding," her mom shouted. "You're making things bigger than they are." Madison just stood there, speechless. A misunderstanding? What she saw wasn't confusion. It was betrayal in plain sight. Her father didn't say much, but his silence was worse than shouting. He just shook his head and said, "You've always been too emotional, Madison. You make everything dramatic." Haley sat beside them, tears in her eyes, playing innocent. "I never meant to hurt you," she said softly. "It just happened. Please don't make this ugly." Madison could barely recognize her sister anymore. The same girl she once protected from everything was now the reason she was standing in this storm. The room felt heavy with judgment. No one looked at her with love, only disappointment, as if she had done something wrong by standing up for herself. Madison realized then that her family didn't care about truth or loyalty. They only cared about keeping things quiet, keeping up the illusion of being a perfect family. She looked at each of them one last time and said, "You all made your choice. I'm just finally making mine." Then she walked out. No tears. No second thoughts. She packed her things, signed the final divorce papers, and left without telling anyone where she was going. For the first time in her life, there were no calls from her parents, no messages from her sister, and no apologies from Ryan. It was complete silence, and strangely, it felt peaceful. The weight she'd carried for years started to lift. She wasn't just ending a marriage. She was freeing herself from the people who had never really loved her for who she was. That day, Madison stopped. After leaving everything behind, Madison moved into a small one-bedroom apartment on the edge of the city. It wasn't much, cracked walls, old furniture, and a leaky faucet, but it was hers. No judgment, no shouting, no guilt hanging in the air. Just quiet. The first night there, she sat on the floor surrounded by boxes and told herself this was the start of her real life. She had nothing left from her old world, no husband, no family, no savings, but she finally had herself. The days were hard at first. She woke up early, applied for jobs, and faced rejection after rejection. Some nights she cried, wondering if she had made a mistake walking away. But each morning she got up again and tried. Madison refused to let her pain define her. When she finally got a job as an office assistant at a small logistics company, it felt like a lifeline. It wasn't glamorous, but it gave her a chance to rebuild. She worked harder than anyone there, stayed late, and learned everything she could. Months passed, and she earned her first promotion. It wasn't just about the title. It was proof that she could stand on her own. She started saving, putting away a little money each week, even if it meant skipping small comforts. Slowly, her apartment began to change. She bought a second-hand couch, painted the walls, and hung curtains she sewed herself. With every small improvement, she felt stronger. Madison didn't talk to her family anymore. There were moments when she wanted to call, birthdays, holidays, lonely nights, but she stopped herself. She knew that reaching out would only reopen old wounds. They never tried to reach out either, and she accepted that silence as closure. She stopped craving their approval. The people she once begged to love her had shown her what their love really meant, and she no longer needed it. Years went by, and Madison climbed higher in her career. Her hard work paid off. A new title, better pay, and eventually, the respect she had always given others but never received in return. She started traveling for work, meeting new people, discovering pieces of herself she didn't know existed. She realized she was happier alone than she ever was surrounded by people who made her feel small. Every night, when she came home, she lit a candle, played soft music, and sat by the window, watching the city lights flicker below. That simple routine reminded her of how far she had come. She wasn't angry anymore. The bitterness had faded, replaced by calm. Madison didn't want revenge or apologies. She only wanted peace, and for the first time, she had it. She built a life that was hers alone, brick by brick, moment by moment. What once felt like the end had become her new beginning, and she promised herself she would never let anyone take that peace away again. Belonging to them, and started belonging to herself. For years after starting over, Madison finally reached a place she once thought was impossible. Her life had changed completely. She had worked non-stop, saving every extra dollar, cutting corners where she could, and focusing only on her goals. There were no shortcuts. Every bit of progress came from her own effort. And now, after years of hard work, she stood in front of her new house, holding the keys in her hand. A 2-story home in a quiet North Carolina suburb. Not too big, not too fancy, but perfect. The moment she stepped inside, she paused and just breathed. The air smelled of new paint and polished wood, clean and full of promise. Sunlight streamed through the windows, and the empty rooms echoed softly with her footsteps. For the first time in a long time, she felt completely free. No memories of pain, no ghosts from the past. Just her and the sound of her own peace. Madison spent weeks decorating the house herself. She painted the walls in warm tones, added small touches that reflected her journey. Plants by the windows, books stacked neatly on the shelves, and candles that filled the air with calm. She didn't rush it. Every piece of furniture she chose had meaning. It was a home built by her own hands, a reward for everything she had survived. She framed photos from her solo trips, the beaches she'd walked alone, the mountains she had climbed, and the quiet mornings when she had coffee with no one but herself. Those pictures weren't about showing off. They were reminders that she could create happiness on her own. Every frame told a story of strength and quiet healing. Sometimes she would sit on the stairs and look around, still surprised that she had made it this far. The woman who once cried herself to sleep in a small apartment was now standing in a house she owned completely by herself. No shared bills, no fake teamwork, no waiting for approval. Just independence and peace. Neighbors came by to welcome her, and though she was friendly, Madison kept her distance. She had learned to protect her energy. She no longer needed to please everyone around her. She smiled more, but she spoke less. There was power in her calm now, a kind of confidence that came from surviving heartbreak and turning it into something beautiful. At night, she would sit on her porch with a cup of tea, watching the sky fade from orange to blue. She thought about the woman she used to be, scared, broken, unsure, and felt nothing but gratitude for how far she had come. This house wasn't just a place to live. It was proof of her strength, her patience, and her growth. Before going to bed each night, she would whisper to herself, "No one will ever make me feel small again." And she meant it. Every wall, every room, every quiet moment reminded her of one simple truth she had. It had been months since Madison moved into her new home, and she had settled into a peaceful routine. Work was steady, her evenings were quiet, and her heart was finally free from the constant noise of the past. She never thought she would hear from her family again, and honestly, she preferred it that way. But peace has a strange way of being interrupted when people can't stand to see you happy. One Saturday morning, Madison was watering the plants on her porch when she heard a car pull into her driveway. At first, she thought it was a delivery, but then she saw them, her parents, Haley, and to her surprise, Ryan. She froze for a moment, unable to believe what she was seeing. It had been years since she last saw any of them, and now they were standing there like nothing had ever happened. Her mother was the first to speak. "So, this is what you've been hiding from your family?" she said, her voice dripping with bitterness as she looked around. "You could afford all this, but you couldn't pick up the phone to check on us?" Madison stood at the doorway, holding the watering can, her expression calm. "I didn't hide anything," she said softly. "You just never asked." Haley crossed her arms, glancing around the house as if measuring every inch of it. "Wow," she said under her breath. "You've really changed, Maddie." Her tone wasn't kind. It was sharp, filled with something that looked a lot like jealousy. Then Ryan stepped forward, trying to look casual. "Hey, Mads," he said, forcing a smile. "I came along to make peace. No bad blood, right?" Madison looked at him for a moment. He was wearing a wedding ring, remarried, clearly moved on. Yet his eyes still carried the same smugness that once made her doubt herself. She let them all in, not because she wanted to, but because she was too tired for another fight. They walked through her home, commenting on every little thing, the furniture, the art, even the smell of the candles. It wasn't admiration. It was envy disguised as small talk. Her father said, "You did well for yourself," but his tone lacked warmth. Her mother gave fake smiles, Haley touched things she shouldn't, and Ryan acted as if he still had a place there. As they sat in her living room, Madison realized they weren't there to reconnect. They didn't come to apologize or to rebuild what was broken. They came because they couldn't stand that she had built a life without them, a better one. She saw it in their faces, the way they looked around like she had taken something that belonged to them. So she stayed calm. She answered their questions politely, offered them coffee, and smiled when they tried to provoke her. But inside, she felt nothing but clarity. These people no longer had power over her. Their opinions didn't matter anymore. When they finally stood to leave, her mother said, "Don't forget where you came from." Madison smiled gently and replied, "I haven't. I just stopped living there." She watched them walk back to their car, still talking among themselves, still unable to understand that the girl they once controlled was gone. As the sound of the car faded, Madison closed the door, locked it, and leaned against it for a moment. There was no anger, no pain, only peace. She knew now that they hadn't come to see her. They came to see what freedom looked like. Built this life on her own, and that was something no one could ever take away. After that unexpected visit, Madison thought they would leave her alone, but a few days later, her mother called and said they were coming again. "We need to talk," she insisted. Madison agreed, not out of hope, but because she wanted to end things properly this time. She was done pretending everything was fine. She wanted her truth to be heard, once and for all. When her family arrived, the atmosphere was tense from the moment they stepped in. Her father stood stiffly near the door, Haley kept pacing, and her mother wore the same look of judgment she always did. Ryan didn't come this time, but his absence didn't make the air any lighter. Her mother started first, her tone sharp. "We just don't understand why you've pushed everyone away," she said. "You used to be kind. You used to care." Madison sat calmly on the sofa, her hands folded on her lap. "I didn't push anyone away," she said quietly. "You all walked away when I needed you most. I just stopped chasing after you." Her father sighed, shaking his head. "You're still holding grudges, Madison. It's been years. When will you let it go?" She looked at him, her voice steady. "I let it go the moment I stopped expecting you to love me unconditionally. You all taught me that love in this family had rules. I had to earn it, prove it, and suffer for it. That's not love. That's control." Her mother's eyes filled with anger. "Don't you dare talk to us like we're the bad ones. We did everything for you." Madison stood slowly, her expression calm but firm. "No, you did everything for yourselves. I spent my whole life trying to make you proud, trying to keep the peace, even when it destroyed me. But I'm done now. I don't need your approval, your forgiveness, or your version of love. I finally learned to live without it." Haley's voice broke the silence. "We're family, Maddie," she said softly, tears in her eyes. "You can't just erase us. We made mistakes, but we're still your blood." Madison turned to her sister, her voice gentle but strong. "Family doesn't betray you for convenience. Family doesn't watch you break and call it drama. I loved you, Haley. I loved all of you. But you made it clear my love wasn't enough unless it came with obedience." Her mother gasped, clearly offended, but Madison didn't stop. "You didn't come here to make peace. You came to remind me of who I used to be, the girl you could guilt into silence. But she's gone now." The room fell quiet. No one said a word. Madison walked to the door, opened it, and looked at them one last time. "If you ever decide to love me without conditions, Maybe one day we can talk again. Until then, this is goodbye." Her parents glared, Haley hesitated, but eventually they all walked out. Madison closed the door behind them and leaned against it, feeling the weight lift from her chest. She didn't cry. She didn't shake. She just breathed. For the first time, the silence didn't feel lonely. Months passed, and life slowly settled into a calm rhythm. Madison no longer woke up with the weight of old memories pressing on her chest. Her mornings were simple. She'd brew a cup of coffee, step onto her porch, and watch the sun rise over the quiet neighborhood. The air was cool, the birds sang softly, and for the first time in years, she felt at peace. There was no shouting, no pretending, no trying to fix things that were never hers to fix. Just her home, and the peace she had worked so hard to earn. Sometimes, as she sat there, she thought about everything that had happened. Her marriage, her family, the betrayal. It used to hurt so deeply that she could barely breathe. But now, those memories felt distant, like a story she once knew but no longer belonged to. The anger had faded, the sadness had softened, and all that remained was understanding. She didn't hate them anymore. She simply accepted that they were who they were, and she couldn't change that. Madison often reminded herself how far she had come. There were nights when she didn't think she'd make it, when the silence of her apartment felt heavier than the chaos she'd left behind. But with every small step, she learned to stand taller. She built a life from the ground up, one that was hers alone. Every promotion she earned, every small joy she allowed herself, became proof that healing wasn't about forgetting. It was about rebuilding. Now, in her beautiful home, everything reflected her strength. The photos on the walls showed moments of freedom. Road trips, beach sunsets, quiet dinners with new friends who treated her with kindness. She didn't need validation anymore. Her happiness didn't depend on anyone's approval or apology. She had created something better, peace that no one could take from her. Sometimes people from her past reached out. A message from Haley here, a voicemail from her parents there. Madison never replied with anger. She simply chose silence. She had learned that peace wasn't just found in quiet places. It was found in the decision to stop letting chaos back in. As the sun rose higher, Madison smiled to herself. "They took my love for granted," she whispered, "but they'll never take my peace again." She took another sip of her coffee, letting the warmth fill her chest. It wasn't revenge that satisfied her. It was the life she'd built after losing everything fake. Her story was never really about pain or betrayal. It was about freedom, the kind that comes when you finally stop fighting for people who never fought for you. Madison knew she wasn't the same woman she once was. She had found her power, not in anger, but in peace. And as she watched the light spread across the sky, she realized this was her happy ending. Quiet, simple, beautiful. Hers. It felt peaceful. They were gone, but she was finally free.